It is game day, Illini fans. Illinois is set on to take Oregon on the road today. Prime time, 2:30 Central Time, 3:30 Eastern Time. They are the primetime game once again after playing last week against the Michigan Wolverines. They travel to take on number one Oregon. Oregon is now number one in the country after Texas losing to Georgia. We're here to have the pregame. Illinois is ranked number 20 in the nation. The Big Ten is looking like a very good football conference with all these ranked teams that they have. So we're going to discuss the game, what it's going to take for Illinois to leave Oregon with a win and get another upset over a number one team. It'd be the first time they've upset a number one team since 2007 when they traveled to take on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Juice Williams and company upset them. So we're here to talk about it today. This is the ILL INI segment, part of the Coach Steve Show. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Coach Steve Show YouTube channel to find the ILL INI segment, where we discuss everything in University of Illinois athletics. Check it out on Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. So, like I said, Illinois 6-1, traveling to take on 7-0 ranked number one Oregon Ducks. Illinois number 20. They left a few days ago. Brent Bielema felt like it's a long trip. It's the first time they're heading over towards the East Coast. What a crazy time where the Big Ten stretches from the East Coast to the West Coast. And what a crazy time that they have to travel from Illinois all the way out to Oregon. That's a long trip. Even Illinois out to the East Coast is a long trip, but this is a completely different one. So let's talk about Illinois. They are not looking favorable to experts. It's 22.5 points. Like, it's anywhere from like 20 points to 22, 23.5 points. Over under 54. I feel like, I understand why it's 22.5, but I feel like that's a lot. That's a lot because Illinois' defense is still pretty good. And I already know people are going to say, well, Oregon didn't let Purdue score at all, and Illinois let Purdue score. But you can't always look at that. We always look at numbers, but you can't always look at it that way. Illinois has one of the top defenses in the Big Ten. They give up 344 yards total. And the next one is Michigan. They give up 326. Now, Oregon's defense is nothing to bat an eye, but we also have to compare their schedules, right? I think what's gone under the radar is that people are not looking at Illinois' schedule. And let's break down Illinois' schedule versus Oregon's schedule. And this is nothing against Oregon and their coaches. I have much respect for Dan Lanning, and I would love to have a conversation with him on this podcast, because before Oregon got into the Big Ten, I liked Oregon, right? And I still do until they play Illinois. But people don't talk about like Illinois' schedule. At the time, Kansas was number 19 in the nation, so they had to play them. At the time, they had to play Nebraska, number 22 in the nation at the time. Then they had to play Penn State, which is number 9. Then they played Michigan, who's ranked number 24. Now they got to play Oregon, who's number 1. This is their 5th top 25 ranked opponent. Now, I know Kansas, ever since the Illinois game, Kansas has kind of fallen off, but it is nonetheless their 5th ranked team that they have to play. So their schedule is decently tough, right? And I know what people say about Michigan, but they have like the best front seven, one of the best front sevens in the whole country, right? They just got to be able to feed off each other, and that's a whole other conversation. But Oregon, if we look at Oregon's schedule, they've only played, this is their 2nd ranked opponent that they've played. The only one that they beat, now this isn't just only, they beat Ohio State 32-31, and Ohio State was ranked number 2 in the nation. So they have not, this is their 2nd ranked opponent that they have to play. Now they are taking care of business. So they're doing what they're supposed to do, right? But they struggled at the beginning of the year, and they're slowly starting to figure it out. But Illinois has to take advantage of, the struggles that Oregon had at the beginning of the year. They need to watch that film and say, what were those teams doing to cause said struggles against Oregon? Idaho, who has a great coaching staff, Idaho kept up with them. Oregon won 24-14. Boise State almost got them. It was 37-34 Oregon win. Then took care of business. I'm sorry, Coach Thomas Ford. He's the running backs coach at Oregon State. Big fan of him. They got Oregon State 49-14. UCLA, who's struggling, they got 34-13. Then they beat Michigan State, who's struggling, 31-10. I mean, it's a big time win against Ohio State. Nobody's taking that away. It was awesome. And then they did not have a letdown against Purdue. I'd like to say Purdue was really down on themselves after that Illinois game, which caused them not to play well against Oregon, and they won 35-0. So Oregon's schedule compared to Illinois', who's had the tougher one. And so let's refresh people. I've talked about Illinois' schedule with the ranked opponents. They played Eastern Illinois, Kansas, Central Michigan, Nebraska, Penn State, Purdue, Michigan. So there's an argument to be made that Illinois' schedule has been tougher. Now, I know you can't always look at, well, you haven't played nobody, right? Like, it's an argument to be made and an argument that you can't die on a hill on because it is college football. It is the transfer portal era where every team has a lot of good players, and you got to take care of business. Oregon's taking care of business. Coach Lanning has gotten the team to play well. But that's why I bring that up, because when you go back to the defensive statistics, if you're looking at total yards, okay, and that's where the total yards can be misleading a little bit. Illinois gives up 344. Oregon gives up 297. Now, that could be compared to, like, who are they playing and everything else. Now, do those yards that you give up points? Illinois is giving up 18.1 points per game. Oregon is giving up 16.6. Again, we can talk about, is that because of the schedule? Oregon has given up a total of 116 points. Illinois is giving up 127. Illinois is giving up 145 rushing yards a game. Total rushing yards that they've given up is 1,017. Oregon allows 122.3 rushing yards a game, and they have given up 856 rushing yards. Through the air, Illinois gives up 198. Oregon gives up 175. Total yards passing that Oregon has given up is 1,229. Illinois has given up 1,392. So a lot of these are very similar numbers. Total yards is 2,409 that Illinois gave up. Oregon's given up 2,085. Again, does it correlate with the schedule of who they've played, or is it from Oregon does have a decent defense? Coach Dan Lanning is a defensive-minded coach, just like Coach Brent Bielema. So it's going to be a unique matchup here versus head coaches. But Illinois, I personally think, I mean, they talk about it. I'm okay giving up yards, and you're only giving up 18.1 points per game, right? So they have one of the top defenses in Illinois in the Big Ten. So talking about the defense, let's talk about the offenses. Oregon gets 458 yards per game. They have 2,102 passing yards. They average 300 passing yards a game. They average 158 on the ground, and they average 34.6 points per game. Illinois averages 29.6 points per game. They get 146 on the ground and 219 through the air. They're very well balanced. 1,535 yards passing and 1,024 rushing yards. Oregon, again, like they're very similar numbers. The only number that you're going to say that sticks out is Oregon gets way more yards per game, but they're getting like almost 100 yards more than Illinois, and they're only scoring, 5 points more per game. So again, the yards can be misleading. You have to look at the whole picture. So these are similar-ish teams. Similar-ish is a word that I, made up, but it's similar-ish. They're very similar in style. They're a little bit faster up tempo, I think, than Illinois. They have a lot of weapons with speed that Oregon can use, but they can score points when need be. But it's not the Chip Kelly one where they're getting 40, 50 points and they're boom, 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 snapping the ball every 12 seconds. They can take their time and dissect what the defense is doing. So both have decent offenses, pretty good offenses, and they both have good defenses. So I'm not saying this is like a very even matchup, but it's leaning towards that it's very even in this matchup from number 1 to number 20, and that just shows where the Big Ten is right now. This is going to be a very tough battle. Oregon, Illinois is only 8% win factor here. I think people are very looking over Illinois. And that's because Oregon's quarterback is starting to be into that Heisman conversation. Gabriel, he has a 77% completion rating. He has 15 touchdown passes with 4 rushing touchdowns. So when you're in that Heisman candidate, running, that's why they're doing that. But Luke Altmaier, other sides, this is where they're kind of similar, believe it or not. I know Illinois is not this flashy offense, kind of like in Oregon. They just kind of do what they do. So Gabriel's thrown 15 touchdown passes. Luke Altmaier has also thrown for 15 touchdown passes this season. He only has 1 interception. He has the best touchdown to interception ratio in the Power 4. He has completed 65.9% of his passes. Against Michigan, he threw a touchdown and ran for 1. Again, I talk about the schedule. That was Illinois' 3rd win in a top 25 opponent. It's the most since 2007. So very similar quarterbacks. And if you're looking at touchdowns and everything, I know Gabriel rushes for a little bit more touchdowns, but Luke Altmaier can run too. So you're seeing the similarities here between the two teams. The last time Oregon and Illinois played in football was 1995. Oregon won 34-31 that game. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I have the right thing. The big keys here. So we talked about the numbers, talked about the schedule, talking about the quarterback play. Illinois' offensive line is going to have to continue to grow. And against this Oregon defense that's pretty good, they are going to have to dominate up front again like they did against Michigan. Now, I got a lot of comments when I posted clips about Illinois dominating. There's a difference in definition of domination. You could sit there and say, okay, here's an example. You could say Oregon dominated over Purdue because the score was 35-0, right? I can say the same that Illinois dominated and won 24-7 over Michigan. What's the difference? Are we watching the blocking, right? Are they controlling the line of scrimmage? Controlling the line of scrimmage doesn't always mean you're pushing them 5 yards down the field. It's, are you covering people up, and are you able to make plays when you need to in that domination? And it's not always the offense that dominates. Illinois' defense dominated as well. So just because the score is not 50-0 or 48-7 does not mean you didn't dominate. And I thought Illinois, from a defensive perspective, dominated. And I thought there were a lot of times that the Illinois offensive line dominated up front and were being very physical. Not saying that you had to move them 5 yards down the field, but are you blocking them even a yard? Are you getting into them and attacking them? And I thought they did that most of the time, often than not. So when I say domination, what I'm talking about is I think that the Illinois offensive line is going to have to come up and be very physical with this defensive line and the linebackers of Oregon, who have speed. Oregon is known for speed. It's Nike, like the founder of Nike. They are always fast. For example, Coach Brent Bielema said that he thought Josh Getsy, the left guard, he said that he thought he was team offensive MVP for taking control of Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. There are 2 NFL draft picks, potential draft picks for Michigan. So to go up there and say you were able to block them, not necessarily put them 5 yards back, but that's what you did, right? So I think that that's going to be a key thing here is Illinois' offensive line going to be able to control everything? Illinois' passing, I know they're not blowing everything out of the water, but we have the players, and I've said this over and over again. We finally have the receivers that can make some plays. Josh McCray is really getting back to what he was running the football. And I think against Oregon, you're going to be able to run the football a little bit better than you would against Michigan. Michigan has a good run defense. And I think if you start to, as you slowly allow Luke Altmaier to start being in the run game, that will open up the rest of the run. And if they're going to try to clog it up for Josh McCray, you have Aiden Lowry that can go out there and be your speed guy. Maybe you have a jet sweep with a wide receiver. This is kind of where you miss Isaiah Williams. I wish Isaiah Williams was with this core of receivers because that would be a perfect balance where you have two guys that you could throw it to on the outside. Your tight ends can make plays, and now you have your jet sweep guy or a shallow cross guy, mesh guy that you could have. So I do miss him in that aspect. But that's going to be a key thing here is that Luke Altmaier is going to continue to play the way he needs to play, but the run game is going to have to start to be there, and you're going to have to take time off the clock to keep Oregon's offense on the sideline. And I think if you do that, you'll start to frustrate them, and you're going to take them out of the play calling that they want to do on offense. If you're going on, 3 to 6 minute drives, and if you can come away with some points, it's going to frustrate that Oregon offense staying on the sideline for so long. So I think that's the key thing here is I think Josh McCray is going to have a big day. And I think that offensive line is obviously going to have a big game. Pat Bryant or Shakari Franklin, one of those two has to have a big game in the pass as well. Illinois' defense, they got too complicated versus Purdue. All the coaches admitted to it that they thought they got too complicated in their play calling and their coverages and doing everything else. Then against Michigan, they got really simple. And when they got really simple, went back to what they were doing, they played even faster. How fast was Illinois' defense against Michigan? They looked pretty fast. So if they stay simple, because Oregon's going to give you different looks, they're going to shift, they're going to do all those things. But if you stay basic and all you got to do is work on disguising coverages, giving them different fronts, stunning up front, playing fast and physical, you're going to do just fine, right? The linebackers, though, are really going to have to step up in this run game because they're going to have a tough job because Gabriel can run. Their quarterback can run. So it's going to be tough sledding to try to cover everything. And you have to be okay with giving up some of those yards, like I always talk about, the bend, don't break philosophy. And again, Oregon's not, scoring 34 points is good, but Illinois is scoring almost 30 points. So are you going to be able to keep them under 30 points that they're comfortable scoring in and keeping it a tight game? Now, Oregon has proven that when it's a tight game versus Idaho and Ohio State, that they are battle tested and they can come out on top. But Illinois has also proven that where it's battle tested. They were a couple plays away from maybe pulling that one out against Penn State. So you could be sitting here talking 7-0, 7-0, both 3-0, 3-0, or 4-0, 4-0 in conference, right? So there are those couple plays, but they are battle tested. And so I'm hoping for that physical competitive game. And I'm hoping neither one, yes, it'd be cool to watch Illinois blow it out as an Illinois fan, but as a overall fan, I always say this, in this particular type of game, you necessarily don't want to see a blowout. You want to see a close competitive game from an overall fandom. Now, Illinois, I would love to win by 21 points. I do think that 22.5 is a lot with how Illinois' defense plays and forcing the turnovers. And I sometimes don't understand that part of it. But I do think that Illinois is going to have to force some turnovers. They're going to have to get an interception or a fumble. And they force Michigan, they force some teams into turnovers. And so I think they're going to have to continue that Peanut Tillman punch style to get rid of the ball, right? Because Gabriel has thrown 4 interceptions. He has been sacked 9 times. So can we force pressure on him? Can we contain him in the pocket? Can we force a turnover? Luke Altmaier's only turned the ball over once. Has thrown 1 interception. Now, Luke Altmaier has been sacked 20 times. And so, like I said, it's going to start up front. Can we be physical in the run game? Can we be physical pass protection-wise? But some of those are scrambles, and they consider them sacks. So how true are those 20 sacks considered like actual sacks where they get them? Kane Fagan is out for the year. He's still Illinois' leading rusher being out, but he had surgery. He is out. So our next leading rusher is Josh McCray with 231 yards with 3 touchdowns. Oregon's Jordan James. So part of tackling the quarterback, we're going to have to sell on the run game. He has almost 1,000 yards rushing. He has 717 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns. He averages 5.9s a clip. Gabriel, now he only has 92 yards, but he can run in the red zone. So that's why I mean, like containing him, making sure he stays in the pocket, especially if they do get to that green red zone. But they have to sell out on Jordan James because their next leading rusher is 214 yards and Noah Winnington. But they do have to control the run game. And it's tough because then you're saying, well, Gabriel's 2,000 yards. He's a Heisman runner. Like they have to control everything. So our front 6, 7 are really going to have to control the run game. I think we have the guys in the back end with our corners and safeties to be physical with those receivers, because the last time those receivers saw real physicalness is probably Ohio State. And, I know they scored 32 points, but it took every ounce what they had in them to beat them. And so I don't think Oregon's going to overlook Illinois, but I do think this is going to be a more physical game than what these experts are talking about. Receiving, Pat Bryant's our leading receiver, 484 yards. Leading receiving for Oregon is Tez Johnson, 536. They have some good receivers, and they have a good tight end in Terrence Ferguson. He has 321 receptions. So Illinois' defense has a tough task. So it's going to take a total team effort. Illinois cannot afford to turn the ball over, I don't think, at all. And I think Illinois is going to have to force 1 or 2 turnovers, and they're going to have to convert things to points. They cannot stall out on drives. We always have a very good opening script to come down the field, and we have to have like more than one script to come down, and we're going to have to be able to make adjustments that Dan Lanning is going to do on his side. But I think Brent Bielema and company are going to have them ready to play. I think that they are going to have to keep Oregon's offense off the field, and they have to wear down Oregon's defense. And I kind of wish they didn't run that fake punt because now Oregon's going to be ready for it. But they had to run it like you want to beat Michigan. But I do think Illinois is going to bring it. I think that they're going to be physical, and that's what they just have to compete and be physical. Like Oregon is not. No offense to Oregon. Again, none of this is offense to Oregon. I do respect their coaches and what they're doing there and what they're building there. But I think that Oregon necessarily isn't like a Georgia that like overpowers you necessarily. They are 2 different teams. Oregon likes to use their speed, but Illinois' got some speed too, right? They got speed on offense. They got speed on defense. I think it's going to be a closer game than 22.5. At least I hope it is. But I just have that gut feeling that it's going to be. The last time Illinois played a number 1 ranked team, they were on the road versus Ohio State in 2007. All of us Illinois fans, if you were old enough, you never forget where you were for that game. And Illinois controlled the clock that game. Illinois was able to run the football. They were able to make a lot of 4th down conversions as well. So as long as Illinois' heads are screwed on straight, they got there early, they didn't travel late, they got there early and have been there for a few days to get used to the climate there, different than Illinois. Like today, I think right now it's like 44 degrees, right? And to soak up what Oregon is. It's an awesome place. I've never been there, but it looks awesome. I'd love to go to that stadium. It's going to be loud. It's prime time. I don't know if it'd be louder at night or during the day, but at 2:30 primetime game, it's probably going to be loud, right? Because Oregon's looking to make a statement in the Big Ten, saying, "Hey, we beat Ohio State. Now we're beating another ranked opponent in Illinois." Like they're trying to make a statement, but Illinois is also trying to make a statement and saying that we have to learn how to win, and we got to learn how to win against these type of teams. So I think Illinois will bring it physicality wise and speed wise. They just have to be able to not give up big point plays. They have to be able to bounce back if they do give up some type of big regular play, and they have to make sure that they're not going backwards on offense, and they got to make Oregon turn the ball over somewhere. Forced fumble, disguise a coverage for Gabriel and get him to throw an interception, and Illinois' run game too, and that physicality I've talked about. So I think Illinois will bring it. Those are my keys to the game today for Illinois versus Oregon. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow it right on Apple and iTunes and Spotify. basically wherever you get your podcasts at. Follow on X, Instagram, and TikTok. All that stuff in the description. Leave a comment. What do you think is going to happen with this Oregon Illinois game? Is 22.5 points too high, or is that just exactly where it needs to be? I think it's too high, but we're setting up to find out. Check out all the other videos and stuff on the YouTube channel. So I appreciate anybody watching or listening. Again, always comment down below. I try to get back to some. I get too busy, but I always try my best to get back to the comments and the clips. So thanks for everybody watching and or listening. This is Coach Steve. We'll see you guys next time.